Hi, I'm John Ficarra. Welcome to Ficarra Classic, and I'm here with Matt. Oh, no, I'm not here with Matt. Matt has decided to take some time away from doing the videos. He's focusing on working on cars, which I'm glad he's doing. He's an amazing mechanic. So we brought in a real professional cameraman. Say hi, Brett.
Hi, Brett.
He's getting it. All right, now we're off. So I've been away for a little while. I apologize, but you know, life gets in the way. And we're back. And so on Instagram, I asked you guys in a poll what you wanted to see first. And of course, the biggest answer was the Rocky Aoki Porsche 911 Twin-Targa Limousine, which of course is probably the craziest thing I've got in the garage right now. If you watched the last video on this, this should have been painted on its wheels by now, a year later, but it's not. And well, you know, we all do projects and they all get put aside. I had client cars come in. We had to finish and actually make some money in the garage. But we're back on the Aoki car now, and we're doing some good work. We're gonna get it on its suspension. We're gonna get it to Montana. We're gonna get it painted this winter. So what I'm gonna show you now is all the crazy stuff we've been up to last year on the Rocky Aoki limo. So let's get started with the front end right now. All right, so we'll start at the front of the car. While we had the whole front end apart and we had a little bit of time on our hands, I decided to clean and check and go through everything. Now, I found out a few things. This car is a real Frankenstein. It's a real bits of car. So it had, on either side of the car, two different hubs. I mean, at these quick glance, they look like the same hubs, but they're not. Just to give, here's a little lesson in 911 hubs. This is an early 911 hub. And this is one from a little bit later, and you can see it's a little deeper because they went to a wider wheel a little bit later. Then they went to this hub. Now the difference between the two is in the size of the center here. This cap goes here, this cap goes on the inside. Why? Why? Because this is what's called hub-centric. So early wheels relied on the lug nuts, on the little tapered lug nuts to center the wheel on the hub. Later on, wheels were made so they actually fit on the hub. So the inside of your wheel actually centers on the hub itself. So I decided that we were going to go with the later hub-centric, and so I found another one of these that's in the mail right now, and then we can get the hubs on. We did the same thing for the rears. These are the rear hubs. As you can see, this hub has nothing on it, and this one does. This is a hub-centric rear hub. So we're putting obviously, two hub-centric rear hubs on. So we got the hubs sorted. And then we had the front struts off, and I realized that one strut here is a little different than this strut, which is about to be painted. And the difference is you can see at the top here. See the big band at the top? This is a later one. It's a reinforced top. Now these are the Bilstein struts. You can tell from the beautiful Bilstein green. So I had to find a second one, which I did. So we have a match pair of these. We're about to paint them. Now these are really cool. I've always kind of, you know, again, Porsche does cool stuff. In one of the earlier videos I showed you how the torsion bars on the front are kind of hidden inside the A-arms. Well, this is where the shock is, your traditional shock. This shock cartridge, actually it's upside down, slides inside of here and locks inside of it with this little pin. Goes through the bottom and locks it in place. So when you want to change your shocks, you don't take off the whole system. This just slides right in, locks in, and you can change it whenever you want to different strengths. So we're going to go with a new Bilstein strut inserts for that, the B6s, which we don't want anything really tough because it is a limousine, so we're not going to put like a racing suspension on it. Now, this is the fun part. We got to repaint them Bilstein green, all right? So this is the top for this that slides over the top like that right now. Now that one's been painted. Now, when we paint these for concours cars, we will go and match very closely the original Bilstein green. And we'll put the Bilstein stickers on them, and you judges can't tell the difference. If you are just knocking around and restoring your Bilstein shocks, this works perfectly. This is John Deere green, and I swear to God, it is like a tenth of a shade away from what a real Bilstein is. Most people can't tell the difference. So if you want to do it nice and cheap and really quick, any John Deere green color, this is Krylon, works great. And you can restore your front and rear Bilstein shocks. Another thing that we changed, that we saw on the car, was that this is the cross member that goes across from side to side, and the ARs lock into here, but it has a huge dent in it. And after, I was like, the dents, they all get dented because it's sitting under the car and rocks, and people run over things with them. Usually it doesn't change the shape of the bar because it's so robust. But unfortunately, we had this one really measured and it was bent a little, which will change the alignment of the front end. So I got a nice used one and we put that on the car. Now what we'll do now is I'm going to raise the car up and we'll look underneath at a few things that we attached. All right, now the car's up in the air. I want to show you the beautiful work that's gone on here. This is, again, it's so much nicer than this car really needs to be. But I kind of only work one way. I grew up doing kind of concours restorations, so I have a hard time doing crappy work. So we've cleaned up the entire wheel well here. We've got the A-arms on. We've got the sway bars attached. Now, if this were a concours car, this would be plated, but we don't care about plating anything up for this car, so it's painted. This is how a sway bar works, by the way, on the front of an early 911. And the sway bar is another torsion bar, basically, that goes through the front of the car right behind the gas tank. And it's linked to the A-arms here. So as you're going down the road, this is moving up and down, acting as the sway bar. This is your tie rod. We did update these, so a very smart thing to do, even with the early cars, is the turbo tie rod conversion. It's a much more robust, better tie rod system, and you can put it on any early 911. It's kind of a go-to standard, unless, of course, you're doing something super concours, and somebody's going to crawl into the car and take a look. One thing we found out, and I showed you in the last video, I was talking about whether these weren't factory A-arms we put on here. These were, repops by Dansk. And we got the second one in the mail, and it busted open. Here, I'll show you what happened. Is if you come up here, it's hard to see, isn't it? What we're looking at here is this is where the bushing is. This is the arm. The bushing's in here. And it's got this collar on it that's welded around the bushing. And when we were pushing it on the car, this weld just popped right open. And we realized when we got the second arm that it was already breaking from the factory. So we took them both off and re-welded both sides just in case so they wouldn't break. But that's one of the problems with repop parts, is that sometimes their quality control isn't fantastic. You want to make sure you look at everything you put on your car, no matter if it's old school or it's new repops or OEM, make sure that the parts are good to go. So we made sure we went through all the welds on these and made sure it was in good shape. Because the last thing you want to do going down the road in your turbo limo is have the front suspension come apart. So we had to re-weld that. So the arms are in. All this new sheet metal looks fantastic. Here's the new crossbar I showed you earlier. So that's all nice and straight. And then we've got the steering rack up there. And from here forward, this car is absolutely gorgeous. In the middle, not so much. So let's go to the back, and I'll show you the back nice stuff, and then we'll get to the nasty, nasty things. So let's walk to the back. All right, now we're at the back. So again, we went through and we painted and cleaned up all the wheel wells. It looks really good under here. So we were doing the suspension. We're like, yeah, let's take off the suspension. We'll clean it up and we'll update it. And we started doing some math, and I started working with our engine builder, Tom Amon. I'm like, what kind of suspension rates do we want? And the stock torsion bars in the back, he's not going to really hold up for the extra weight and extra size of the car. So we're going up in size. Now, the torsion bars, if you come around here, they go into the car here. Now, remember, they were in the A-arm on the front, but on the back, they're in the car itself. And then the suspension arm sits back here, moves up and down, and twists on that, and that acts as the rear spring. But you'll see on a lot of old 911s, the sill has a little hole in it, a little patch. And people always go like, what's the hole for? Sometimes they think it's for a jack. What it's for is to slide the torsion bars out of the car. This, when they built it, they must have put the body on and then left the torsion bars. So we had to drill holes in the body to get the torsion bar out. So we have new holes in the body, and that's what a rear torsion bar looks like. There's one on each side, obviously. So we're getting bigger ones. These are 23 millimeters. We're gonna go up to 27 millimeters And I think that the math on that works really well. It's going to ride nice and be able to handle the extra weight. And then I think, you know, if it works out great, then we'll fill this hole in permanently because it's not good looking and I don't think a patch will work. But we kept the fiberglass from that so we can build that back together. So that'll be easy enough to do. And while we were under here, we cleaned up everything under here. These on either side are the sway bar mounts, and very typical on early 911s, they bend inward and sometimes they just break off altogether. So a little trick is to weld a little piece of metal in each side to basically box it in so they can't bend in. So we box these in, not that we're gonna be tracking it, but again, it's gonna weigh a little bit more and have bigger tires on it than it should. So we boxed those in, made that really nice. We got all this cleaned up. And then, I was showing you in the last video the deck lid, and we were going to put in a second strut. Are you okay there, Brett?
Breaking my camera.
Okay. He's learning. He's getting it. Brett's getting it. He's going to follow me around. It's not easy. So these are normally, the trunk lids have a single strut on this side. And I showed you last time we were going to weld in another bracket and put in another strut. So now it's a 2-strut rear deck lid, and it makes it so much easier to lift because this deck lid up back here is insanely heavy. It's just all fiberglass. So that helped out really well. And a nice little mod we can do while this is apart. So essentially this area here is ready for the engine to go back in, which is great. So the back end's done, the front end's done. Oh, one other thing in the rear end. Come over here. So, and here's one I prepared earlier. The rear trailing arms, what these are, so these are where the hubs go in the back, and this arm moves up and down, basically. That's your rear suspension. So the wheel would be out here. The stock ones for this era, so remember, this is a 73 chassis, are these steel ones like this. And they're similar. The short wheelbase ones are a little different. The long wheelbase are what these are. And then in 74, they decided to upgrade the car when they, of course, went to the short hoods and the bumpered cars. So they decided to go with this. And this is the updated trailing arm for 911, which essentially was the same all the way till the 964 came along. And it's aluminum. And you can see it's pretty chunky looking. You know, they had to kind of reinforce it, obviously, because it's aluminum. But it is, I weighed it earlier, 4 pounds, 10 ounces lighter than the other arm, which is significant in your suspension. Now this is, again, I've explained this once in another video, what unsprung weight is. This is unsprung weight. So any weight that's not the chassis, whatever's on the other end of the spring that's moving up and down, that's unsprung weight. And like, so your wheel and your tire and the arm here, all of that is what the spring is working against. And the lighter all this can be, the more supple and the better the suspension can work. So they knocked off almost 5 pounds just off the trailing arm, which is pretty significant, which I'm sure allowed them to go to a bigger tire and wheel and without gaining too much weight on the rear end. So we're doing that mod. It's actually a pretty simple bolt-on mod. It's not terribly complex, but I figured since we were putting a turbo engine in there, a slightly stronger, nicer, newer rear trailing arm would be a smart idea. So now, to show you the dirty work in the middle of the car. Now this is where Brett's gonna earn his keep because we gotta figure out how, can you crawl in here with me? You gonna kind of, without hitting your head? Luckily, Brett's a lot shorter than I am, so it works out great. So we took the floor out in the last one and we're beginning to put a new floor in now. Now originally what I talked about was a flat floor going across here and then putting in a tunnel down the center. I talked to a few people and a few fabricators because I don't have a big enough what's called a brake. They have metal brakes, and essentially what metal brakes do is bend large sheets of metal. I don't have a brake that's big enough to bend 1/8-inch steel at this length. So I talked to a couple of guys and they're like, oh, we have the guy for you. And he shows up and he's an old school drag racer. He built floors and extensions for like 50s, 60s drag racers. He's like, I know what to build you, no problem. He comes in, he measures this area with like a tape measure and does it, right, scrolls a couple things down. I'm like, okay. And I explain kind of what I want. And he's like, yeah, because I wanted to break out, down, and over. So the floor drops down a little bit like it did stock, so it all match up. And he's like, oh yeah, no problem, no problem. Couple sketches, couple numbers. He goes, I'll talk to you on Monday, and I'll get you, a sketch of what I'm going to build. So I'm like, great. So I don't hear from him Monday. And I'm like, oh man, another flaky local vendor. Like, no. No, he calls me Tuesday. And he goes, are you home? I'm like, yeah. He goes, I'll be right over. And he comes over with the floor. He had already made it. He's like, yeah, I figured out what I wanted to do. I built it. And freakishly, his measurements are all within about 1/16 of an inch of what I need, just from this little scrap without making a prototype. Like the way I work, I would have made something out of another piece of steel and measured it and bent it before I made it out of final steel. Yeah, he was just like, no, we'll just make this. So what it is this floor slides into the front and then goes in the back. So it's actually underneath the front sill, and it matches. We beat this down so it's nice and flush with the new floor. So it's underneath here, and in the back, it sits on top, which fits on this ledge, which was already here. So we'll seam weld this instead of spot welding it. We're gonna seam weld this whole thing on. And the tunnel is gonna come from, you can see it on there, from this piece here. This is the other side, and this is the tunnel. So essentially, it'll have a tunnel with an opening underneath the car, which I like a lot because there's a lot going on inside of these tunnels. You don't normally see a 911 tunnel open because there's no reason ever, unless there's a lot of rust, to tear one out. Inside, you have the shifting mechanism, you've got the emergency brake cables, you've got the heater cables, you've got the fuel line to and from the engine, you've got evap lines, there's a lot going on in here. So having access, especially since we have to extend all those pieces, is fantastic. Oh, the rear brake line's in there, the clutch cable, the accelerator cable. It's going to be very complex because we have to build little mounts inside this tunnel. So having it open at the bottom is great. Now, we're not losing a lot of structural rigidity here because what we're going to do is then bolt a panel underneath that'll close this in so it'll be a full box. So we'll have a box in the center and basically the sills, which are boxes on both sides, and you start kind of making a monocoque, essentially. We're making boxes, and they're going to be completely structural to the car. This is going to hold the whole car together. This is 1/8-inch steel. This is twice as thick as the floor steel right now. It'll pull this whole thing together. It will allow us to put the roll bar in, allow us to do a lot of stuff, and obviously bolt some seats down to it. But it's heavy, but surprisingly not as heavy, or well, close to being as heavy as that ridiculous galvanized floor they had in it originally. But look at the bends on this. Like, he did all these little minute bends, plus the big bend here. All of that from a couple of drawings, like old school craftsman, old school dragster guy knocked this out in one shot. And he was awesome. So, he changed my design, but in the end, I kind of had to agree with him. So what we'll do is we'll put this in and then we'll weld this edge. So that top box will be one piece. So it'll go up and down here. That's a little, I guess it's hard to explain a little bit. But that'll box in here. We'll have a nice open tunnel underneath here. This will hold the center again. And then we have it already butted up against the front tunnel. So swinging around here, I'll show you the front tunnel. Whoa! So here's the front tunnel. Here's some of the tubes. There's actually a ton more of stuff that comes down and through here. So you can see how it butts up against the old tunnel perfectly. That top will go here, then it'll come down, and this will all be open under here, give us perfect access with a nice panel. So I'm really excited about this. I actually had Matt not weld this in so I could show it to you before we put it in the car, because I think it's going to come out really cool. And that kind of steel is going to be strong, especially with the box in the center. So I'm excited about that. Because really, once the suspension, front and rear suspension goes on and this floor is in and we can put the roll bar in there, I can finally send it to Montana. And then it's their problem. It's the guys at Gear Shift Garage and Sway, who are, some of the most wonderful people on the planet, are going to take care of this, and they're going to cover it. Gear Shift Garage, check them out. They will have footage of them doing all this stuff. So we'll get all this together and send it off to them. While it's gone, we will work on the engine and transmission. But Well, maybe not the transmission. Since we had a year almost, we already did the transmission. And we will talk about that more in the next video. I was in the middle of editing and I realized this video was going to be about, well, an hour long. And so I'm going to give you a break now and I'm going to come back with the second half of this in a few days, which will cover us tearing down the transmission and the turbo engine. It's really kind of a great stuff because you'll get an introduction to Tom Amen and the magic he works on all these fantastic engines and transmissions. So stick with us. Please like, subscribe, ring the bell, do all those YouTube things. We're back in action at Ficarra Classic, and I hope you'll stay with me along for the ride. Have a great day.